In this video, we are going to be looking at the GAMSAT exam, but particularly how the results are calculated and what the scores look like. This is going to be particularly useful if you are a graduate entry applicant and you sat your GAMSAT recently and you're waiting on your results, or if you are thinking about sitting the GAMSAT exam next year. So let's get right into it. So what is the GAMSAT exam? GAMSAT stands for Graduate Medical Admissions Test, and it is a standardized test used by different graduate entry medical schools in the UK, in Australia, and in Ireland. It is designed to assess a candidate's ability to understand and analyze complex text, to think critically and apply scientific knowledge. The GAMSAT is divided into 3 different sections, and each section tests a different thing. Section 1 will test you on reasoning in humanities and social sciences. For this section, there are 62 multiple choice questions, and you have 100 minutes to complete it. Section 2 is all about written communication. For this section, you will have to write 2 essays in 60 minutes. And Section 3 is reasoning in biological and physical sciences. For this section, you will have 75 multiple choice questions, which you have to complete in 150 minutes. So how is the GAMSAT scored? Well, the GAMSAT is scored using a weighted average of the 3 sections, and the final score is reported on a scale of 0 to 100. Here is how the scoring and calculation process works. So for Section 1, the reasoning in humanities and social sciences, you will be scored based on how well you can understand and analyze different passages from text. For Section 2, your written communication, they will look at your essays and you will be scored based on the coherence, structure, and ability to address the prompts that you were given. For Section 3, you will be scored based on your ability to apply scientific knowledge, mainly biology, chemistry, and physics, in different situations. Each section is marked out of 100, but all of the scores are standardized. This means that the raw scores that you get, so how much you actually score in each section, are converted into a scaled score to make sure that it is equal and even across everyone who takes the test and the different GAMSAT tests that happen throughout the year. Also, there is a weighted average calculation. This means that not all of the sections will contribute evenly to your overall GAMSAT score. In the UK and Ireland, Section 3 is given more weight, so it will contribute more significantly to your overall score because it assesses scientific knowledge. So the typical weighting would be Section 1 is 25%, Section 2 is also 25%, and Section 3 would be 50%. To calculate your overall score, GAMSAT will combine the weighted scores from each section using the following formula. Your overall score would be your Section 1 mark plus your Section 2 mark plus 2 times your Section 3 mark, and all of that would be divided by 4. So, for example, if you scored 60 in Section 1, 65 in Section 2, and 70 in Section 3, your overall score would be 66.25, according to that formula. Your final score is typically rounded to the nearest whole number, so in this case, your total score would be 66. So just to clarify some of the terms, when we say raw scores, this is the total number of questions that you got correct, but the raw score for each section is not released to anyone, including the test taker. Scaled scores are the scores that you will see, and this will take into account the difficulty of the test and how well other people did. The aim of this is to make it as fair as possible to everyone taking the test, because maybe the questions that were given in the March sitting might have been harder than the questions that were given in September, for example. The scores are then scaled so that they are comparable, making it more even for everyone who took the GAMSAT exam. Percentiles are also released in addition to these scaled scores, usually in a graph form. This will provide you with some context compared to how other people scored who sat the same exam. The percentile is not typically used in your application by universities, but gives you a good understanding of how well you did. Okay, so now let's look at how essays are scored. In Section 2, each of the essays that you write will be scored by an independent assessor. Your overall score then is the average of the 2 independent scores. The essays are assessed for things like clarity, coherence, originality of ideas, and your ability to come up with a coherent argument. Okay, so to summarize, these are the key takeaways about how the GAMSAT is scored. The final GAMSAT score that you received is a weighted average across the 3 different sections, with section 3 usually weighing more than the other 2 sections. The scores are scaled and standardized to ensure that it is fair for everyone who is taking the test. And a score of 50 is the midpoint because remember, you are scored from 0 to 100. Typically, a score above 65 is considered competitive for graduate entry medical schools. So now let's talk a little bit about the results. If you sit your GAMSAT exam in March, then you are likely to receive your scores around late May, so it can take a bit of time for you to hear back from them. If you sit it in September, then you're probably going to have to wait until like mid-November-ish to get your score. You will be emailed when the results are released, and they will be available for you to view on your account. The score that you receive is valid to apply for university for up to 2 years from the date that you sit it. So now let's look at the different scores and what is good and what is not so good. So a good score is probably anything above 61. This would place students above the 75th percentile, meaning that 75% of students scored below this. An average score typically ranges from 56 to 58. That would put you in the 50th percentile, meaning that 50% of people scored less than that. And a below average score is anything below 56. This would place you under the 50th percentile. However, it is important that different universities may place more weight on certain sections than others. For instance, some of them might want to look at your Section 3 score specifically, as it might be more important to them, typically because it's the science section. Other universities, however, might take a more holistic approach, so I would definitely recommend that you look at each university's website to see what guidance there is around the test score. By checking university websites, you will also be able to see whether there are any specific cutoffs for the GAMSAT score. This will give you a bit of a clearer picture and idea of what previous scores were and what you need to score if you want to apply there. So let's say you have sat your GAMSAT already and you know your score and you're trying to figure out where would be good for you to apply. A very good or above average GAMSAT score would pretty much allow you to apply anywhere that you want, and you may have a good chance of being invited to interview. Some of the most competitive universities that you can apply to with the GAMSAT are the University of Nottingham, St George's University in London, the University of Exeter, and the University of Sunderland. An average GAMSAT score would still allow you to apply to several universities, and some of these might be the University of Worcester, the University of St Andrews, the University of East Anglia, the University of Liverpool, Swansea University, and the University of Plymouth for undergraduates. If your score is below average, then it's recommended that you resit the GAMSAT exam at the next sitting, or you also sit the UCAT exam, as this will give you more options for where you can apply. The great thing about the GAMSAT exam is that you can resit it, so it is recommended that you sit it earlier in the year, as if you need to resit it, you can take it in September before you submit your application. So that was everything on how the GAMSAT is scored and what the results look like. I really hope that you have found this useful. And if you would like some more information on the GAMSAT specifically and how to prepare and what you need to know, then there is an entire playlist for you to check out, which you can find up here. Otherwise, thank you all so much for watching. I wish you all of the best of luck if you've sat the GAMSAT exam, and I will see you next time.